Like he said, my name is Zayn Walker. I am a senior at Northcliffe High School, which is just 7 miles down the road, up north. Um, as you can see, I put my best shirt on. It's my pineapple shirt. I only wear it for special occasions. I was a kid that grew up in church. I have been to Red Brush Christian Church my entire life. My family's been there pretty much their entire lives as well. But despite of that, it took 16 years for the gospel of Jesus to reach my heart and to change me and for me to discover my callings and my gifts. And my callings that I discovered was that I want to go to Bible college, I want to lead high school groups, I want to lead small groups, and I discovered my spiritual gifts. Like I said, I started speaking and preaching, which was a super, super big deal to me because I never wanted the spotlight. I don't want to be in front of people. I never liked that. I was always shy. But here I am. Like I mentioned, God revealed His calling for me about a year ago. And there's a passage in Luke chapter 12 that I really love, and it talks about a calling to be prepared. I'm going to be in Luke chapter 12, verses 35 through 48. If you want to follow along, I'll explain verses 35 through 40, and then I'll kind of go from there. So in 35 through 40, Jesus is talking to His disciples, and He's telling them about a master and a servant, and He's saying that the servant should wait for his master to come back when the master leaves, and that he should stand and watch and be ready for him to come back, and he should be ready no matter what time of the day it is, daybreak, nightfall, it doesn't matter. And he wraps that up by saying, "You must also be ready, because the Son of Man will come at a time you do not expect him," talking about his second coming. He then goes in verse 42 through 44, or 46, excuse me. He talks a little bit more about this master and the servant, and he talks about the master leaving, and he leaves a certain servant in charge. And I'm going to call this servant the boss servant. So he leaves the boss servant in charge, and he tells him, take care of my other servants and give them food when they need it, and just make sure they're cared for. And instead of doing what the master wants, the boss servant says, you know what, my master's taking forever. I'm going to go get drunk. And so he does that, and he gets drunk, and he starts beating the other servants. And he is not doing what the master expected him to do. He's wimping out on the responsibility. And the master finally comes back, but the boss servant thinks he's going to take forever. So he doesn't expect him to come back. And the master comes back, and he says he's going to cut him up. So he cuts him up into pieces, which is horribly graphic, and that's a terrible end to the story. But that's what happens to the boss servant. Jesus then wraps it up in verses 47 and 48 by saying, "The servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked." This is a really, really serious passage, and you can kind of gloss over it, but the truth is still a very serious matter. It's talking about Jesus coming back and being ready for that. And like I said when I told the story, the master put the boss servant in charge, and so the boss servant had a lot of responsibility. Well, the other servants, they may not have had as much responsibility. We don't really know. I just presume that the master told them to do their normal jobs or to just listen to the boss servant. And so when the master comes back and he finds that the boss servant isn't doing what the master expects them to do, he gets in trouble. And it says that the other servants don't get in as much trouble as the one who has the most responsibility. And so as I thought of this passage, I discovered two important truths. I actually discovered a lot more, but I don't really have time to go into all of it. The first one I found was, whether you know God's specific will of you or not, you can still use your gifts and your talents that God has given you to spread the good news of Jesus, to teach others about Him, to serve. You can do that if you know what God has called for your life, and you can do it if you don't know. The calling to serve and to use all of our gifts is for every single one of us, no matter what stage we're in. Like I said, God's given us each specific gifts We're all unique, and depending on what kind of gift you have, you may land in more responsibility than others. Think about it. If you know God's will for you, and you choose to ignore it, you're in the same boat as the boss servant. And you see how that ended up for him. He got cut into pieces, which you may not have have that much responsibility on you, but it's still the same boat. James chapter 4 mentions this, and in verses 13 through 17, he kind of talks about, why are you saying today or tomorrow you'll do this? And he says, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Basically, we're not promised tomorrow. So if you can do any good today, do it today. Don't push off from it and procrastinate. He wraps it up by saying, if anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it's a sin for them. So not only is it wimping out on responsibility, it's also a sin. On the flip side of that coin, if you don't know God's specific will for you, he's not going to punish you for not going into full-time ministry, or for not living overseas as a missionary, or for not starting a business, or for writing a book. He's not going to punish you for those things he hasn't called you to do. As long as you're keeping him the Lord of your life, as long as you're living the Christian life, as long as you're seeking him out, I'd say you're riding pretty good. My encouragement is for you people that may not know what God wants for your life. Work while you wait, in the words of Pastor Rusty George from Real Life Church in California. Work while you wait, keep God as Lord, and keep asking him what he wants from you, while spreading the good news and serving. I also want to encourage you all to read this passage. You'll find that it will speak to you specifically and your needs, rather than me speaking to you generally in specific or non-specific terms. Finally, the last thing I found was that when our master comes back, he will judge us based on what he has asked from us. This differs from person to person. Like I said, we may not have all the same responsibilities because of the specific gifts we have. We're all unique. Darrell L. Bach has a commentary on this passage, and in it he says, in all the speculation about when and how he might come, we should perhaps pay more attention to who we will be when he comes. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Harrison Arnold, and I'm a sophomore in high school at Flora. I'm here to talk about perseverance. What is perseverance? Perseverance is doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. Now, why is this important? Perseverance is a trait you need to get through life, whether in good times and especially in bad times. An example of perseverance in my life is football. Football requires persevering, like lifting weights to be ready for football season. You have to lift weights constantly, and it makes you sore and tires you out, but you keep on going knowing it betters you on the football field. Or whether it be 95-degree weather in the first couple of weeks of practice, or it be the freezing weather I had in March and April. The extreme seasons strengthen us. After doing all that, I know how to play through the toughest times and conditions. The reason I'm willing to persevere through all this is to become a better and well-rounded football player. The book of James talks about a deeper level of perseverance. Now please read with me through James 1, 2 through 3. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. James was writing to the new Christian churches after Jesus' death because they were experiencing persecution and poverty. James was writing to encourage them not to give up on their faith. He tells us that trials strengthen our perseverance. Our perseverance gets stronger the more we go through. That sounds kind of bad, but James tells us to consider it joy when we go through these times. Now what? That is completely against what the world tells us today. Let's look at the news, where everybody's just acting crazy and negative, and it's all terrible. Having joy when things are bad makes us stronger. Jesus suffered because he loves us. When we suffer, we should feel closer to him. Doesn't it make sense that we'll suffer here on earth too? Shouldn't we expect to suffer for him? Trials build character in us. Now, I love American history, and I'm pretty sure most of you have probably heard of General George Washington. But I don't know if many of you have heard of Colonel John Glover and the Marbleheaders. On December 25th, 1776, General Washington needed supplies for his troops to get through the winter or they would lose the war. Across the Delaware River was a camp of 900 Hessians who had plenty of food and supplies. And then he asked Colonel Glover and his Marbleheaders to take the boats along the river to use for their mission. At 6 p.m. on Christmas night, the Marbleheaders took 2,400 troops, 18 cannons, and several horses across the Delaware River through a major winter storm. It took them 11 whole hours to row back and forth to each side of the river. And it was about 300 yards of water. That is the length of 3 whole football fields. After they reached the other side, they then marched to the fort, for 10 miles and took everyone back. They marched 10 miles there, captured the fort, and then marched 10 miles back and took everyone back across the water. And then they successfully captured the Hessians and their supplies. The Marbleheaders did not sleep for 3 days. That is perseverance. Because of their perseverance and the horrible time they went through, they won the Revolutionary War and gave us this beautiful country we're able to live in today. That is the kind of perseverance James is telling us to have in our faith. We have to put in the effort, knowing we will face trials along the way. Not only do trials strengthen our perseverance, but wisdom also strengthens our perseverance. Let's read verses 4 through 6. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lack wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. James says perseverance makes us more mature in our faith. I really haven't been through enough to understand all of that, but James says it brings wisdom. We are to ask God for wisdom if we are struggling. The good news is that if we ask for it, we will receive it. If we doubt, we can't expect to receive anything from him. When we pray in faith, we will have less doubts. Then, when we go through trials, we will have the wisdom to get through them and understand why they are good for us. Oil Belt is now 75 years old this year. That is amazing. I'm sure it took a lot of men and women with a lot of faith and wisdom to keep the camp going through the years. I imagine they had to persevere through many trials, keeping the camp going, but I am so thankful they did that for us. We get to have the joy of celebrating here today and coming back to camp each summer, which is awesome because I love this camp so much. We know trials and wisdom strengthen our perseverance. We receive something when we do trials the right way, James says in James 1:12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, the person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Just like the Marbleheaders fighting for their independence, or the past and current leaders of our camp working to keep it going, we have to know there's a bigger reason of the perseverance we go through trials. Getting through those trials will keep us close to God and strengthen our faith. If we persevere through trials, we get the crown of life, which is eternal life with God. When we spend eternity with Jesus, all the pain and trials we went through will be gone. We won't remember them, and we will only focus on the joy. General Douglas MacArthur said, "Age wrinkles the body, but quitting wrinkles the soul." We can't quit when the trials come. We have to persevere. We will persevere with wisdom and joy, showing the world that our Lord is in control.